delegates afterwards. So use the Q&A function if you have more specific questions. And then as we carry on, you'll see that Tamar, my colleague, will be introducing you to the delights of Menti, where you can put in your responses. We can ask you questions and you can respond kind of then and there, and we can sort of see live what the kind of, the wisdom of the crowds on some of the key questions around open data is. So hopefully that'll be a good engaging session, and we'll kind of show you how to log into that. It's really, really very simple. So 3 ways to engage through this session. Okay, so let's just, before we head over to Saul, who's our first speaker, Hannah, could we just put up the agenda for everyone to be clear exactly what's happening and where they're at? So this is the introduction bit. You'll all be aware of. We're going to hear a little bit from Saul, as I mentioned, in a minute, in terms of introductory remarks, but then kicking off with a kind of other way around to usual, perhaps a panel session with Matt, who's kind of head of enterprise data at UK Power Networks, and Michelle, who's from Open Data Institute, and one of UK Power Networks sort of partners in this, and kind of long-term specialist, obviously enough from the name, in the area of open data, and particularly perhaps from other sectors, and perhaps, I don't know, might be fair to say that the energy sector isn't always as quick as it might be to learn from others, and this is an area where there's a lot of expertise and knowledge in other parts of the economy. Have already been through some of the transitions that we're undergoing, embarking on now. Okay, so then the kind of the core of the session is going to be Tamar and Kai from Regen running through why we think you might want to use energy data, what you might want to use UK Power Networks data for, and how you might want to be engaged in that process. How you want to contribute, what you want to see. And then finally, we've got a kind of sneak preview of UK Power Networks thinking on a new data portal to give you a chance to sort of see that and help respond and shape that. Okay, so that's our session. So I think we will try and keep ourselves to time, and I will now hand over to Saul to give you a quick welcome and introduction from UK Power Networks. Saul.
Thank you very much, Merlin. Appreciate that introduction. And you looked very calm, even though I had IT issues on my side, but no one could tell. So well done. Thank you, Merlin. Appreciate that.
We had full faith in you, Saul.
Very good, very good. It's always the best laid plans and all. So good morning, everyone. Welcome to our session today. Really appreciate your time. And I hear that we've got quite a few people on the webinar today. So looking forward to your participation as well. So look, the guys asked me to provide a little bit of an intro and context to why we're talking about this topic today, and hopefully it should be self-evident and clear to everyone. But as you guys may know, that a lot of the DNOs have submitted their ED2 business plans 2 weeks ago, and a copy of the executive summary of our plan is available online. And if you haven't had a chance to do so, please do read it. But effectively, this conversation about data needs to be considered in a broader context. As a country, we have a target to achieve net zero by no later than 2050. And it's clear that in order for us to achieve that target, it's going to require a hell of a lot of change on all of our behalfs, not just organisations, but us as individuals. And if you look at the Committee of Climate Change report that they issued last year, I think nearly 40% of the abatement is going to require some form of consumer behaviour change or intervention or action. That's very different to the carbon reductions we've achieved to date. So I think as a network company, a system operator, we have a choice, right? We're at this sort of crossroads. We can do it the traditional way, which is to basically build our way out of trouble and use that as the default. Or we could embrace a different way, a smarter way of trying to achieve it, where we have a hybrid set of solutions, which are a mixture of things like flexibility services, demand side management, as well as traditional reinforcement and traditional activities. And I think that's basically the crossroads that we are at the moment. And our view, if you read our plan, is very much to embrace a smart way of doing things, whereby we think if we can work in collaboration with other parties in the marketplace to be able to produce compelling propositions to enable us all to consume when it's cheaper and greener to do so, and operate in a smarter, more efficient way, it should bring costs down for everyone, and therefore deliver net zero at lowest cost. That is the strategic intent of UK Power Networks. So you might be wondering, why is that important? Well, it's important from a data perspective because data is going to fuel that revolution that I've just described. It's intrinsic to delivering decarbonisation at lowest cost. From the engagement we've done with customers, end customers, that is, they need data, they need information to be able to guide their decarbonisation choices. For market participants, whether it's connection providers, connection customers, whether it's third parties, intermediaries, they need data to be able to understand how they're going to develop new products and services and how the network is behaving and operating and where opportunities exist. We know from government work and work that Laura Sandys has done on things like the Energy Data Taskforce that this is gathering momentum and pace. So really today is the start of an ongoing process, right? This is not a one-hit wonder. We're not just going to tick a box and say, you guys told us to do something and we're never going to talk to you again. That's nonsense. For me, we need to get serious about data. And if we're going to do that, we need to have an ongoing dialogue about it. And for me, this is step one of that ongoing dialogue, which is to be able to understand what data you guys need. How can we start shaping our data services to you? What form would it be useful to you? What are the priorities? Because there's lots of data that people could want, but how do we start to prioritize it that's going to have the biggest impact in terms of consumer value in the shortest time possible? And I guess the last thing I'd want to say is the commitment to act. We don't tend to do things at UKPN just to have a conversation, right? Engagement for me is about engaging for a purpose. And for me, the purpose here is we want to be able to take away specific things that we can go and consider and enact in our business to be able to get things done and actually make change happen. We don't like talking shops in our business. And I think, my commitment to you will be, if you can be proactive and help us, guide us, help us, answer some of the questions we've got, my commitment and personal promise to you is we will act and you will see that response from us. So that's all I had to say, really, a short, sharp summary. Merlin.
Excellent. So thank you very much, and a really great start, and I think great to have that kind of personal commitment from senior level at UK Power Networks that this is all about taking action in the business. Okay, let's go straight on then to our panel session, and I'm pleased to welcome Matt Webb, who is the head of enterprise data, UK Power Networks, and Michelle Brook, Planet Data Lead. That's a great title, Michelle. I want a title with Planet in it, at the Open Data Institute in Leeds. So I'm just going to invite both of you to introduce yourselves and just sort of bring a little bit of context from your point of view to this whole kind of area of work. I mean, Matt, this is you're leading this within UK Power Network. So how's the business seeing it, and why is it so important?
Yeah, thank you, Merlin. Good morning, everyone. So Matt Webb, Head of Enterprise Data at UK Power Networks. As Merlin said, I'm leading on this particular activity around our open data strategy. And it's a large and important piece of work for us that is key within our broader digitalisation strategy. So within December of 2020, we published the latest version of our DSAP, which makes a number of commitments around all aspects of digitalisation, but open data and data in general is a really important element of that. It's a set of activities that touches upon every aspect of our business: culture and capabilities, processes, IT systems and tooling, and obviously how we manage and handle data itself. And as Saul articulated, there's always a danger with data where you become focused on the data for data's sake. Ultimately, it has to deliver value, it has to have purpose. And with open data, that value, that purpose is recognised by a really, really broad and complex stakeholder community, as you can see by the level of interest and participation we have on this call. So this engagement is about how we start to foster and promote that coordinated collaboration that we need across the community, so that we can really understand not just who, but also the what and the why around data requirements, so that we make sure we surface the right data in the right way at the right time. So this really is an important first step for us, this engagement. Clearly, we're looking to get your direct input and feedback across these activities, and to ultimately develop what we want to be a community type approach on this, moving away from a transactional exchange of information between us as a data provider and you, our stakeholders, as consumers. It's about how we can foster communication really between you as well, you sharing applications of our data and best practice and the value proposition, so that we can really drive innovative applications across the piece now and in the future.
Right, after a year of this and chairing about 100 events, I probably should have learned how to unmute myself, but I'll get there. Okay, thank you very much, Matt, for that welcome and an explanation. Michelle, do you want to just give us a quick intro?
Yeah, so I'm Michelle Brooke, self-professed data geek working at ODI Leeds, helping clients and sponsors drive towards net zero. And as part of that, working with Matt and his team at UKPN to help them develop some of the processes needed to help make their data more accessible and, where appropriate, open. And so I just want to start by making sure we're all clear about what we mean when we say open data. So that's data that can be used by anyone for any purpose. Now, it isn't realistic for a host of reasons for organisations to make all their data open, so we tend to think of a data spectrum. At one end, you have closed data, so that may be employment contracts and other data that you legally can't or just don't want to share with other organisations. You then have shared data, so that's data shared with organisations on a named basis, perhaps through developing contracts between the two organisations or finding other ways to authenticate recipients of data and agreeing the terms on which that data can be used. More open again then is public data, so that's available for everyone to see, but not necessarily used for all purposes. And then finally, you have that open data, the data that is available for anyone to use for any purposes, as I kind of mentioned before. And it's already been kind of referred to, there's been a host of recent pushes to try and encourage, require the energy sector to make their data more open, starting with the Energy Data Taskforce and the concepts of presumed open that they introduced. And then also Ofgem taking up this recommendation and starting to explore how to introduce the idea of presumed open into the conditions for energy companies to operate. And so it's really important there, as I'm sure many of you know, to note that Ofgem aren't saying all the data must be open, but that instead that when network operators are looking at their data, they should start with the assumption that it should be made open and then test to see whether or not this is the case and whether or not there are reasons such as privacy or commercial sensitivity to not make that data open. As part of this overall push for presumed open, Ofgem and BEIS funded the Open Energy Project, run out of Icebreaker 1, which is developing a platform to make it easier for trusted organisations to share data, even when that data itself can't be made openly available. So the data doesn't hold any of the data from network operators or other participants, but instead looks really to capture a catalogue of what data sets a company holds, invites participants to join the platform and authenticates them, and then through a series of APIs allow for that appropriate data exchange. And just before I hand back to Merlin, I want to just kind of touch very quickly on some of the lessons that I've learned, that those who work on data have learned from other sectors on the process of opening up data. Because central government and local government has been exploring how to do open data over the last decade. So firstly, make it super easy to navigate. Some government departments, I think in a bid to be helpful, released deluges of data that made it super hard to find key data sets that you as users might be looking for, and often named in ways that meant only those with deep sector expertise could find actually the specific data sets. Secondly, help encourage people to look at your data and do interesting things with it. In part, that's about communication and engagement with key stakeholders. Or alternatively, it could be about developing challenges and encouraging people to develop innovations to help solve problems. And as an example, Leeds City Council made their bin data openly available as part of a broader data release. And the developer sat down and created a service that could tell residents what day bin collections are, can be easily updated around holidays, and make it easy to provide push notifications for when there were changes. Thirdly, I'd say make sure you leave open communication channels, engage with your stakeholders. In part, that helps you understand their needs better and better support them, but it also helps you. So one of our sponsors released a data set, and as a result of that, someone came out to them and pointed out where some of their data was very clearly incorrect. And so kind of through this process of having many eyes on your data, it actually then helps improve your own data, your own internal operations, and really helps you then make better decisions internally. Always think about how to lower boundaries to non-technical audiences. Are there ways you can visualize data or make it easy for people to come in and ask questions, ask you to help solve a problem for them? And then just finally, expect the unexpected. There's a whole host of interesting and smart and passionate people out there who will want to use your data in ways that you never initially thought. So wherever possible, do try and allow and encourage that creativity and just see what emerges through that work.
Excellent. Michelle, thank you very much. And I think you've kind of set out a real great framework there, and perhaps answered some of the thought, given us a good framework to think about some of the questions in this session there. And thank you to everyone in the chat who's providing some really interesting links, things like the RESO, I believe stands for Regional Energy System Operator project, and CSC's Project 3D in Birmingham. I'm sure there's lots more. So for all of you who want to kind of follow up some of this, then there's some great links there. Okay, Michelle, Matt, you both have data in your title, so good people to ask, someone coming to this, fairly fresh, and we kind of heard some of the thoughts, but why has it become such a big deal in the energy sector? We've had Laura Sands' reports of the catapult. We've had the government developing a data and digitalisation strategy. All of the DNOs launching, starting to think and have, what's triggered it? What's made data such a big thought? And Michelle, I might start with yourself on that.
Yeah, so I think it's all linked to a growing recognition that we do need to very rapidly decarbonise and reduce our emissions, in part to hit the net zero target that you mentioned a minute ago, Merlin, but also very really to kind of, prevent some of the worst case predictions that are being modelled by climate scientists. And I also think COP26 is creating a lot of momentum that is really valuable and helping to lead to a whole host of conversations about climate that we haven't seen before. So local authorities developing net zero plans, large businesses trying to understand carbon emissions, increases in EVs, heat pumps, etc. And energy data really lies at the heart of this. So if you're a local authority looking to develop a net zero plan, you need to be thinking about how you encourage the use of EVs and encourage the use of electric or hybrid public transport systems. And all of that really requires you to understand where they can actually be plugged into the grid to charge. Any business looking to understand their carbon emissions will want to understand and interrogate the balance of renewable versus non-renewable energy they're using. And we're all being asked to kind of, be much more aware of the energy that we're using. And so all of these conversations keep coming back to trying to understand what energy data is there, what can people use, how can that inform the decisions that they're trying to make. And as you kind of mentioned, Laura Sanders' work, the task force, and the work that Ofgem is doing is really encouraging that energy data can be made more accessible, which is then further building that momentum and really helping, I think, to drive the recognition that energy data is so much at the heart of how we drive towards net zero.
Okay, excellent. And Matt, you've obviously picked up this responsibility for data within UK Power Networks. Again, if you think back, I suppose, to yourself a few years ago working on the network, would you have expected data to become quite such a sort of core part of the way networks thinking about the future?
I don't think anybody that works in the data arena is surprised by where we stand at the moment. I think the important thing to recognise is that data is an enabler for digitalisation. Effectively, it's the digitalisation agenda that's really being driven here. There's not a single aspect of our daily lives that hasn't transformed significantly over the past decade in particular. And it's just that it's now really starting to materialise within the energy industry. Data is a communication medium at the end of the day. And as there is an increasingly complex landscape across the sector with an increasing number of players, different technologies and capabilities, distributed energy resources being a really good articulation of that, all of these systems and this system of systems needs to interact, and we talk about interoperability quite extensively. Energy Data Taskforce report really places that at the centre of their recommendations. And interoperability is facilitated by data, so that's why it's becoming so important now. We need to be surfacing reliable, consistent, standardised data to allow all the different players, all the different systems, processes to communicate and interoperate to maximise the potential within the energy system and therefore deliver against net zero.
Okay, excellent. There's a couple of questions about the kind of, just to take kind of some specifics coming in about the kind of degree of availability of smart meter data, about licensing, and how there's probably quite a lot of complexity in there, but could you just give us a couple of quick answers to those, Matt?
Yeah, so starting with licensing, absolutely. For a data set to be classified as truly open, it needs to be appropriately licensed to permit reuse, republication, and so on. So it's basically providing a set of terms for the end user so they know what they can and cannot do with that data set. So with the data sets we will be publishing, absolutely, they will be appropriately licensed. But referring to the spectrum that Michelle was talking about, it's important to recognise that not everything is necessarily entirely open. Some things might have to be more restricted and shared and therefore be licensed in a slightly different way. Yeah, there's that piece. Then in terms of just spotting the question there around the types of data sets we'll be publishing, at the end of the day, that's the whole point of this engagement. You know, we understand who our stakeholders are. We now really need to get under the skin of the specific use cases and value propositions to do that prioritised approach. You can see from the attendance that we've got today that the landscape is very diverse and the requirements are really mixed and varied. So we need to take a sensible staged approach in how we start to target delivery against those. We have a good sense of at a headline level the types of data sets that are required, and the reality is we already publish an awful lot. We just need to do it in a more refined, more accessible way, and that's the initial steps we're taking. But absolutely we'll be progressively expanding, extending, becoming more ambitious in what we publish and how we publish it, but very much driven by, you know, the insights and demands that we hear from you, our stakeholders.
Excellent. Okay, and Michelle, give us a sense of you've kind of given us a bit, but the balance between, for someone like UK Power Networks, that kind of regulated utility holds a great deal of data. Now, what's the balance between them just saying, we don't really know how people are going to use this, let's get raw data out here? I don't know, you mentioned the bin data from Leeds, you know, let's just get it out there and let the world innovate and come up with clever ideas? Or how much should they be looking to kind of think, you know, work out what do people really want? How do I process this and provide people with useful services in sort of, you know, I don't know whether it's map forms or it's you know, services that will really help me. You know, where should we be thinking on that spectrum?
So I think that opening up data is part of a massive journey for UKPN and networks, and also for all of the other organisations and stakeholders looking to use that. It's going to be inherently crucial to kind of engage with stakeholders to help prioritise what they do make available, be that made openly available or otherwise. I also think it's really crucial to make sure that you're engaging with stakeholders to hear needs, to make sure data is released in appropriate formats and in ways that is truly usable. For instance, making sure that it's provided at that suitable level of detail, and also kind of, you know, working with people to make that data more visual and to provide services. It's kind of, you know, absolutely crucial to kind of have carried out that engagement. And so I think there's completely a need to be kind of doing that engagement, developing services and hearing needs, especially in that kind of first prioritization piece, because, you know, UKPN has so many different kind of pieces of data. They can't just kind of flick a switch and suddenly all of the data is made openly available. All the data that could be or should be made data is openly available. But I also do genuinely think that there is value in making what can be made openly available as and when they can, as part of that kind of broader journey. And also, I think really crucially, making lists of data that can't be made openly available itself to external stakeholders, because developers and innovators, it can be really hard to kind of say what you need if you don't actually know what an organization holds. And if you kind of, you know, start by making that data catalog, that list available, those innovators, those SMEs can kind of get in touch, can come in, can ask questions, and it can provide that kind of gateway for engagement, even while you're going through the process of exploring what other kind of data sets you may or may not want to kind of make openly available. I was going to say, I don't think it's definitely on either or. I sit in the middle. I think there's bits of both that will for sure be needed, and that as you go through that kind of almost a time lapse, then more and more data, I would hope, would be made openly available for those kind of serendipitous moments of somebody coming along and finding something super interesting to kind of use and develop.
Okay, there was a question from Owen about the sharing metadata, which is, I guess, kind of what you're talking about there, as a sort of list of even if you don't have the full data set, a list of what data sets there are.
Data, you can say, you know, this is what the data sets contain. This is kind of, you know, the time period over which it's kind of captured and things like that. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, Matt, just give us a bit more. Saul's given us a kind of helpful intro here, and Michelle picked this up a bit, but you know, it's all about net zero now, or hopefully a lot of it is anyway. And if you looking at the network's business plans and UK Power Networks business plan proposed that's going in for 2023 to 2028, which will all just go on to the regulator, what's the, you know, this data and like it plays a strong role in those, but just gives a bit more insight about how this actually might enable kind of net zero, how you see it, perhaps an example where you see it's particularly important.
Yeah, so if you think about the core role that we as traditional network operators have, it's about maintaining a reliable network and facilitating connection at its core. Increasingly, it's becoming about level of utilization as well, and I think this is where the digitalization piece is really taking hold. So going beyond quite passive network management, we're now having to actively and dynamically understand and control the network, and to make sure we're maximising the potential for the connection of both generation and load. So from a net zero point of view, clearly we want to be able to facilitate the maximum amount of low carbon technologies across the network at all levels. So therefore, when I go back to that point I was saying previously around interoperability, you know, for those technologies to connect, in the first instance, they need to have insight about where those opportunities exist, or where there's constraints at the moment that could be solved through non-traditional interventions, and ideally those that relate to low carbon. So therefore, by opening up our data, by giving that visibility of where those opportunities or constraints are, it's opening the door for third parties to come in and help solve part of that problem. Equally, when it comes to the actual live network and control of the network itself, when there's so many players that are dependent on and part of that system, that visibility needs to be comprehensive. It can no longer be one or two monopolistic entities in the middle have that visibility controlled, and everyone else is you know, hanging off the side. So therefore, providing it as much I'm going to be cautious in saying real time, but near real time insight into what's happening when and where is very, very key, again, to maximising the potential of those low carbon technologies, all of which contribute to net zero. And clearly, we ourselves, in terms of how we operate, we have a role to play. We talk about network losses a great deal. There's the direct operational activities we undertake as a business. All of these things have the opportunity to be enhanced and improved to reduce our own carbon footprint. So this is why I think open data is very core to that, because going back to that point I made previously, it's the communication medium. It's how we will talk to each other and maximise all those opportunities that exist.
Okay, excellent. So we've talked about data pretty much as a good, you know, an unadulterated good thing. The last 4 minutes of this session, I was going to open up a kind of question about where are the sort of risks and the kind of digital divide that sometimes gets talked about. So massive topic, but you guys have only got a minute to answer. But I mean, I guess this goes slightly broader than data, but I noticed recently Octopus doing some publicity about someone who'd been paid to charge their EV. So they had a nice big shiny Tesla just outside their house, and they've been paid to charge it. And I was thinking, well, that's fantastic, and that's great, and it's the future. But if I was on a prepayment meter somewhere, I'm, you know, without access to, you know, that data, to the, you know, maybe not so, or maybe I was not so app savvy. You know, I might be seeing that slightly differently. So is there a risk here that we open up, you know, sources of value to, you know, people who frankly can already afford it and get all the benefits, and those that are struggling, this actually makes it, you know, we end up making things worse, the gap worse rather than them better? Michelle, got 1 minute to answer that nice simple question.
Massive question, and also really important, something I'm super passionate about. The summary I'd give is that as open data has been increasing over the last decade, we've really seen the rise of intermediaries who can help make sense of some of the data, can help communicate with community organisations and others. So that could be organisations such as Open Data Manchester, who I sit on the board of, who provide some of the skills needed to use data to understand where there are apps, etc., to community organisations who themselves work with vulnerable communities. So you kind of find ways to share knowledge through kind of community networks. It could be organisations like Trafford Data Labs, which is part of Trafford Council, who take questions from members of the public, find data and work with individuals to help answer that. And I also think that kind of making some of this data available will help SMEs and other developers to kind of develop services that could be useful for all of us. I think that I completely agree that there are some massive challenges, but I think it has to be through that kind of communication stuff, and that through increasing efficiency, you then allow councils and other bodies to kind of target more specifically their interventions at those who are more vulnerable because they've got greater resource, be that time or money. And so by being open, it does specifically enable targeted interventions. I know that doesn't quite answer your specific point about Octopus and EV charging. And I think that's kind of part of a much broader challenge that we've got societally that I think needs to be very, very rapidly explored so that we can make sure that this transition is just and picks up those people as well.
Okay, so there's no argument for restricting or not seeing open data as a great opportunity to bring value. We just need to put the effort into making sure that value comes to all members of society would be my sort of takeaway. Matt, what quick thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think we need to accept that there is always going to be variation. You know, you described the digital divide. There are going to be those that are more competent and adept and more likely to be the first movers in gaining benefits in this landscape. I think it's our responsibility to try and level the playing field as much as possible. And this is where in opening up and publishing our data, we need to understand the potential use cases and who the consumers are most likely to be. Where does the value reside? And ultimately, if the more we can do to standardize and present our data in a readily consumable way in varying forms, it takes away that need for certain specialisms. You know, you won't need a first-class degree to consume the data set because it's in a readily usable form. I think that's the key to trying to close that gap. But I think we need to accept that there's always going to be that aspect to it in a competitive market effectively, which is what we're talking about here. And we need to be aware of it, but not see it as a constraint or something that prevents us opening data. Okay,
excellent. And of course, working with vulnerable customers of various sorts, and there's a big part of all the network's business plans, actually. So that's some good insight there and what they're planning. Excellent. Okay, thank you very much. So I think that's really sort of opened up some of the issues and thoughts around this whole area of open energy data. Why? How? What are the risks? What are the opportunities? So now we're going to go to our next session, which is thank Matt and Michelle very much, and go to our next session, which is really about where you start to give us your thoughts. So we've given you some good intro, and that's going to be led by my colleague Tamar, who has been leading our work with UK Power Networks on this area, and is going to take you through the wonders of Minty and how you can answer some questions for us and give us your view. And sort of we're looking for the wisdom of the crowds to help guide UK Power Networks, and of course anyone else who's listening and participating on this whole process of opening up energy data. Tamar.
Great, thank you very much, Merlin. Hannah, if you could share the slides, that'd be fab. Thank you. Great, so yes, I'm Tamar Bourne, I'm the head of Smart Energy at Regen, and we've got some others from the Regen team on the call as well. We've got Hannah and Tamsin beavering away in the background, so if you've got any specific questions for Regen or any technical problems, then please ask for help in the chat from them. And we've also got Kai Hoare, who's going to be running the next session as well. So Regen has been working with UK Power Networks and ODI to help establish a collaborative community. So what we're trying to do is shape and inform which data is made available and how. And we're hoping that all of you on the call want to get involved in that collaborative community. And this session, as Merlin said, is to really get a sense from you on what approach you think UKPN should be taking, so their approach to opening up data, which services you think might be most important to you. So just before we get interactive, thought it'd be useful to share a bit of context about the work that Regen's doing. So we are in the process of creating an engagement plan with the goal of co-creating these open data services. So we've started off this process by doing a literature review of all the engagement findings to date in this space. And as you probably know, there's been a lot of work happening in this space over the last couple of years. We've already heard a bit about Icebreaker 1, and there's also the Siemens Yoda project. ONS and Hippo Digital worked on the Energy Data Visibility project. Energy Rev have been looking at producing a category of energy data projects, and we also worked with UKRI last summer and Energy Systems Catapult on a local energy data innovation project, which was a big stakeholder engagement exercise to look at what do people actually want from energy data. And we've also been gathering together lots of ideas about engagement. So what are the best ways that we can work with a wide range of stakeholders to really shape the open data offering that UK Power Networks presents. And Kai will be testing some of these engagement ideas with you in the next session. So as I said, this is all about getting your input, and we'd really like to get your views on the general approach that we should be taking to opening up data. We'd like to know if we've missed any potential user groups. So the user mapping that we've done so far identified 48 different user groups, but we're sure there are others out there that we want to know about. We also want to know about the data types that you're most interested in and the use cases that are most relevant to you. So you'll see from the literature review that we've identified over 100 use cases, but we're going to need to start this process of prioritisation to help UK Power Networks identify which are the most important use cases and therefore which data sets and data services they should start to make available. So we're going to be getting your input through a platform called Menti, which lots of you will probably be familiar with already. But if not, I'm going to talk you through it. So we're really keen to make sure that everyone gets onto this. So yeah, take your time. If you've got a smartphone, the easiest way is to just hold your camera up to that QR code, and that will take you straight to a browser. And that will log you in automatically. Alternatively, just go open a tab in your browser, either on your desktop or on your phone, and type in menti.com and enter the code 74379068. Great, I can see lots of you are signing in already, so that's fantastic. And we will keep the banner across the top, which has got the code in it. We'll keep that up there. So. And I think one of my colleagues is also putting it into the chat, so you should be able to. Great, thank you, Tamsin. That's going in there. Great, so I can see we've got about 40 of you signed in, and there's 184 in the webinar. So come on, people, get involved. We really value your feedback. This is going to have a direct impact on the decisions that UK Power Networks makes. Plus, it's much more enjoyable for you to get involved and see how your results relate to other people's, and also it makes it less painful for me if we have. We don't want any tumbleweed moments, basically, people. So sign up and get involved. Okay, so you can keep signing in, and we're going to start with a little tester question. I think Merlin's already got this one rolling. So, what's the weather like where you are today? Is it sunny? Is it cloudy? Is it grey? Is it thundering? Is it raining? Great. Let's give you a moment all to input your weather. Here it's kind of mixed. Fantastic. Still coming in. And if you're having any problems with Menti, then please highlight that in the chat, and either Tamsin or Hannah will be able to give you a hand. So fantastic, we've got over 100 responses coming in now. Okay, wonderful. So let's move on to a little bit more of a significant question. Please tell us a little bit about yourself. So this is actually we're not going to see the results on the screen. This is going to be anonymous. But the reason that we've got this question here is to help us then trace your results or link your results together. And that allows us to be able to look for trends, for example, between your preferences and the type of user category that we will put you in. So obviously these aren't going to appear on the screen, but I'll just give you a moment to input your name and your organisation. And as I said, this will be kept anonymous. Fantastic, I can see the numbers are going up, thank you. Great. Okay, so let's move on to the first question, which Merlin already put to Michelle earlier, and that was about the general approach that we should be taking to opening up data. Do you think it should be sort of speculatively opening up as much DSO data as possible for stakeholders to use as they want, allow innovators to do creative things with it and produce new products and services? Or do you think that we should be prioritising opening up specific data sets and creating data services that are of most value to stakeholders? Or do you think both? I think Michelle's final answer to that question was that it should be a combination of both, but really interested to see what you all think. Brilliant, thank you. So it looks like, yeah, we're generally in agreement with Michelle that it should be a combination of both, but a little bit more emphasis perhaps on prioritising opening up specific data sets than just opening everything up and seeing what happens with it. Fantastic, thank you everyone. So as I mentioned, we went through a process of looking at the different potential users of energy data. Through that process, we came up with these 9 different categories, which had 48 subcategories. And we are aware that there are others out there that we haven't yet identified. So as you can see, just to give you an example, under the energy sector, one of the subcategories there is an energy efficiency provider. We've also got a generator, an energy supplier, a smart control system provider, an aggregator, etc. And we've also underneath sort of UKPN's direct stakeholders there, we've got the kind of competing services like IDNOs and ICPs, other network operators, their internal operations, their supply chain partners, etc. And in a moment, I'm going to ask you which category you think you fit into. And we're well aware that quite often you'd fit into more than one. So for example, a local authority might also be, you could categorize them as a large consumer. You could also categorize them as a generator if they only own their own generation. So this next question asks you, so which user group do you most identify with? And we're obviously aware that you will, there's often quite a bit of crossover. So for example, I think we'd all consider ourselves as consumers, but perhaps only put yourself in that category if you represent sort of consumer views as part of your job, or perhaps you are a large consumer and that's the main reason that you're interested in energy data. Fantastic. So we've got lots with us from the energy sector and local government, research and innovation. Lots more dots flying in. And quite a few others. If you put other as your answer, it'd be quite useful to know from you which other groups have we missed, how have we not categorized you, and if you're happy to share that in the chat, that would be really useful. So we've got a technology provider as an example of another. Fantastic, thank you. And I also wanted to ask you about the data types that are of most interest to you. So UK Power Networks has categorized the different data that they hold into these 6 different categories. So I'll quickly run through those. So personal data, so that's all about individual properties, how they use power, their peak demand, etc. And it's worth noting that these will often not be presumed open because of privacy issues, and therefore consent would need to be required. But customer data refers to sort of the aggregated and anonymized personal data, so that falls into this category, as well as the kind of large scale connected customers. So that could be both generation customers and demand customers, and data within that data category could include sort of import and export data, peak demand, and the different connected technologies, etc. Then static asset data is the sort of describes the network assets. So that could be their location, and this is static because it doesn't necessarily change much over time. The dynamic data, it describes how assets are actually used. So this includes things like capacity. So for example, we got the example there, might have a transformer that has the potential for 60 MVA, but it's actually only loaded at 30 MVA. So that kind of data, I think capacity data is particularly of interest to generators, for instance, wanting to know where they can connect on the network. We've also got operational data, which refers to how the network is functioning and includes data sets like power flows, constraints, and also data around flexibility procurement. And the last one there is fault data. So this is data that can be live or historic about outages on the network, so whether they're planned or unplanned, the cause, the duration, and the location of those faults. So with those descriptions in mind, we're interested to know which data types are of most interest to you. And the answer to the question might well be that you don't know. So just to go back to those descriptions again, so personal is about individual properties, customer is aggregated personal data or large scale generational demand. Static is a description of the assets. Dynamic is how those assets are used. Operational is how the network is functioning. And fault data is about sort of live and historic faults. Okay, so we're seeing a bit of a preference there for operational data and dynamic asset data, but really quite a mix. That's interesting. Give you a minute for a few more answers to come in. Great, okay, let's move on. So we've talked a little bit about use cases. So use cases are sort of generally problem statements or reasons for needing and using energy data in this case. And I talked a little bit about the local energy data innovation project that we ran last year, which engaged several hundred stakeholders on what they wanted to use energy data for. And these were the top 5 use cases that came out of that study. So number 1 there, I want to understand how plans to reinforce or actively manage the network may enable new connections. I want to develop a detailed evidence-based plan of the activity and investments needed to meet net zero. I want to know where the most viable places are to connect new generation assets. I want to identify the most appropriate location for EG charge points and deliver an appropriate number to achieve high utilization rates. And the last one there, I want to understand opportunities for investing in flexible resources that enable me to change when I import or export power and how I can maximize potential revenue streams. So what we wanted to do with you now is just to test whether those ones are relevant, or which one is most relevant to you. And if none of them are particularly relevant, well, please tick other. And there should be a comments box there for you to be able to let us know what are the most important areas for you. Like why do you really want energy data? What would you like to do with it? What problems do you think it will help you solve? It'll be interesting to see if we get a similar finding from what we had with the Local Energy Data Innovation Project last summer. Okay, So what we found before was that people were most interested in how reinforcement plans can enable new connections. But I think what we're seeing here is that there's a greater interest in flexibility, locations for EV charge points, and also developing a net zero plan, which sort of correlates with the number of people we got here from local governments. That's interesting. Fantastic. And those 11 others, yeah, please do share your thoughts on what's most important to you. Fantastic, thank you. And this is the last question from me today before we move on to Kai. How should we prioritize which data and data services are made available? So this question, you can rank your answers. And this is really to help us come up with a process with UK Power Networks to help them work out which is what prioritization process we should go through to identify data sets. So we've got impact on achieving net zero coming up very high. And we've got impact on customer bills, also coming up very high. We've got the number of data requests, the impact on security of supply, and the strongest business model of value proposition. And once again, if there are other things that you think we should be taking into account, please share that in the chat. That'd be really useful for us. But we've still got impact on achieving net zero coming out very much at the top. Okay, I think there's just a few more results to come in. Great. Thank you very much, everyone. I'm now going to hand over to Kai, who's going to be talking a bit about those different engagement techniques. So over to you, Kai.
Great, thanks, Tamar. Hi, everyone. My name's Kai Hoare. I'm the local energy coordinator at Regen. And yeah, I just really want to pick up on some of the themes that others have already discussed this morning to discuss how we might create a collaborative community of all of you on this call today and others who might be interested in using open energy data. And what we really want to get out of this session is helping you sort of shape the support that you'll receive from UK Power Networks and others in terms of engaging you with open data. You know, I think that's already been made clear, but what we don't want to do is be sort of overly prescriptive and top down in how we communicate and how UK PM put their data out there. We really want to help you to help us sort of shape that program of engagement, and we'll use the feedback that you give us today to do that. So firstly, just still using that Menti on that same code, we really want to know what level you're at to help us tailor the support that we give you and the level of engagement that we give. So obviously, I think it's quite clear to me from some of the questions that there's a real mix of people on our call today. So whether you're sort of, as Michelle described herself, a self-confessed data geek, or whether you're a complete newcomer to this space, I think in a lot of the other work that we've done as Regen, we've seen a lot of newcomers to this space, whether that's been sort of a grassroots sort of climate action group or a local town or parish council who've declared a climate emergency. I think there's a lot of people who are coming into the energy space and who want to know more and use data more. So yeah, and I think the results that we've got coming in are really bearing that out. That was sort of, yeah, on average around 5 to 6 out of 10 between expert and beginner. So yeah, that's great to see. Please do give us your thoughts on that, so we can help sort of pitch the level of engagement that we put out there. Great. So just covering off again what we want to achieve and why we're here. What we want to do is establish a collaborative community of users, both to help shape the UK UKPN's digitalisation strategy and their open data services will help all of us sort of get a grip on what the best uses for open data might be. So we can all bounce ideas off each other and come to the best uses for open data, which enable net zero, digitalisation, and other things that we want to achieve. So as part of this, we want to regularly share what UK Power Networks is doing around data and get your feedback. So we want it to be an interactive process. So that can be in a number of ways. That can be one-way or two-way communication, and you can get involved to whatever extent you want. And there's some, you can just sort of see some of those guiding principles which will shape this strategy just at the bottom there. So as I mentioned, there's different ways that you can engage. So and it's really up to any of you to what extent you want to be involved. Obviously, we'd love it if everyone really continues the conversation with us and helps co-create these open data products and services. But equally, it's absolutely fine if you would just like sort of regular communication, sort of bulletins to your inbox, blogs and tweets that you can read to stay up to date. But obviously, we'd love it if you got involved with more events like this one to give us your feedback and some of the other things that we've got planned just on the right hand side there, which I'll talk through in a little bit more detail. So yeah, as I mentioned, it would be great if you could let us know the level of engagement that you'd be keen to have in relation to the development of UKPN's open data services. So is it that you just want to keep informed with occasional updates to you, either on social media, LinkedIn, Twitter, or to your inbox? Do you want to just read blogs, or do you want sort of more active consultation and dialogue? Do you just want occasional active participation, whether that's maybe once a quarter, something like that, or do you really want to sort of get into the meat of this and co-create these services and being sort of a more active participant with us? Yeah, it would be great to know your thoughts on that. And again, if it's no, you're not feeling like any of those options really represent how you want to be involved, do let us know otherwise in the chat function there. But yeah, it's quite interesting, I think, from our point of view to see a mix there, which I think tallies with some of our plans. We've got plans to engage through a number of different channels, which again I will touch on. But yeah, really encouraging to see that plenty of you do want that active consultation. And again, it's fine that quite a few of you just want to be kept informed with sort of occasional updates, really. But yeah, please do give us your thoughts. Yeah, so I will move on and just explain what some of these plans are and what some of these options will mean as we move forward. So one of our plans is for UK Power Networks to develop an open data microsite. So this is kind of a one-stop shop for all things open energy data, sort of as they relate to what UK Power Networks are putting out there. So again, this will be a space for you to access this data and also to engage. So to look at blogs, to access social media, also things like surveys and a discussion platform where you can all bounce ideas off each other and discuss how ways in which you're using that open data will all be there on this microsite. So yeah, and again, that's something the UK Power Networks would keep up to date regularly, and that'd be quite a live thing. It wouldn't be something that they just post something up there and leave it. It's something that would be ongoing, and they'd be quite proactive in using. So yeah, that is what the plan is there, and we're really quite keen to know in terms of that microsite what sort of content you'd be most likely to engage with. There's a lot of different ways that we could put the information out there and talk people through open data. So we're really keen to know what's useful for people really. It seems like everyone in the world is doing a podcast at the moment. So we're is that something useful that you'd want to listen to on on your morning walk, you'd want to listen to a podcast about open data? Would you just want to read a quick blog about it? Would an interactive map, something more visual, would that suit you more? Or short posts? So yeah, it's, I think, interesting to know that a lot of people still see the value in reports, which is obviously a useful way of getting a lot of rich detail out there. So it's good to see a mix there. And again, if you've voted for other in there, please let us know what the sort of content that you'd like to engage with, because again, we'll use this feedback to shape what goes up on that site, and will shape the support and the engagement and the conversations that we can have on this. And again, I think really useful for the team to know that interactive maps are really popular for getting open data out there. Just that sort of visual aspect of it is really, really useful for us to know. Okay, and then relating to that, where we also want to know what, in terms of keeping updated about UK Power Networks, open data products and services, we're really keen to know what channel you'd most like to receive information. I think we've had sort of conversations in our team about how, us in the energy sector are very active on LinkedIn, but maybe others, we're not sort of capturing people in other sectors that may not be so active. It may not be their cup of tea. It's so we're keen to know that we're not missing anyone out in terms of how we'll put the information out there about open data products and services. So I think it's great to see that dedicated open data microsite has sort of captured people's attention. And it's quite nice. I think quite nice for us to see that the plans for that will be something that people feel like they can go to and receive information that way. And again, also email newsletters are obviously will be a core aspect of keeping people up to date. And again, just to reiterate, if it's a different channel that you like to use, please do say, although I can see someone in the chat saying dedicated microsite with an email newsletter, which I'm sure will include the link to that microsite. So please let us know if there's any other way you'd like to receive information. Great. So I just want to go through some of the ways for those of you that would like a more continuous dialogue, that would like to sort of even occasionally actively participate. Just some of the ways that we, some of the ideas that we have of how we can keep this conversation going and make this sort of iterative process and have you involved. There's just, if you can, as you can see on the screen, just a number of different ways, whether that's an online discussion platform on that microsite, whether it's sort of a workshop where we can bounce ideas off each other, a hackathon where we can sort of do same, but really have that focused couple of hours and getting a sort of a lot of different users and stakeholders together, whether that's just a survey sort of similar to this one, which we will be leaving open for about a week to invite your views on further, whether that's a steering group where we just got sort of handpicked a representative group of people to give their thoughts, or a data challenge, which ODI have done in the past, where you can sort of showcase ideas, where we can see different ways you're using open energy data. So out of those, for those of you that would like to sort of help us co-create these open data services or participate in a continuous dialogue, please let us know how you'd most like to get involved in that sort of thing, to help us sort of plan how we can sort of engage you and continue the conversation with you on this one. And again, if it's if you just want to be kept sort of be quite passive in this process, and this doesn't apply to you, you just want to be regularly kept up to date with email newsletters, for example, it's fine to select sort of not applicable there. And equally, if there's any other way that you think that you've seen maybe from other sectors, other examples of how this dialogue and this co-creation can go forward, do let us know in the chat. If there's any other way you'd like continue the conversation with us. So yeah, I think it's quite encouraging to see that surveys or consultations, the sort of surveys like this one remain popular. I think that's useful for us to see that there's a lot of votes coming into that. And online discussion platform equally. I think there's plenty of examples of that I've seen where they can be really useful to bounce ideas off each other and yeah, come up with solutions. So yeah, it's great to see so many of you continuing to vote on that and engage with us on Menti. As I mentioned, we will be leaving this open for a little while. So if you have any other sort of thoughts that you'd want to vote on there, do feel free to do that, or let us know any other ideas or thoughts that you have in the chat function there. But yeah, that was all the questions I had. Thanks for so many of you for voting on that. And I will now go back to Merlin.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Kai. It's great the technology we now have to kind of get this live feedback and see it all coming in and live, and really, huge thanks to all of you guys for participating. And lots of interesting insights there. I did notice that Twitter and Facebook both got 0 votes for ways of engaging with people. I don't know what that says about the audience, but or the age group. I suspect my university age children might have a different view, although maybe they'd want Snapchat, but or TikTok even. We didn't put up those options though. So excellent. We are bang on time. So we've completed the sort of main feedback session. What we wanted to do now is just give you a quick sneak preview of some of the thinking of the next step, and that's around UK Power Networks thinking about a data portal. And it's perhaps slightly awkward if all of you had voted that was a waste of time, but it came out pretty high on what you thought might be useful. So in terms of dedicated website, microsite, etc. And I think there's some specific questions there about kind of whether you can link through from that to particular data sets, etc. So to say a little bit more about the thinking on that, we've got Fanny Goldschmidt from Opendatasoft, who is going to give us a little bit of a insight into how that technology might work, and then we've got actually a video as well. So you've got lots of different forms of communication we're trying out here. So to keep us to time, I'm going to hand over to Fanny.
Hi everyone. Thank you. My name is Fanny Goldschmidt. I work for a company called Opendatasoft as an account executive. First of all, thank you for offering us the opportunity to introduce ourselves as a UK Power Networks technology partner on this Open Data project. So about Opendatasoft, in a nutshell, we are a European company that has accompanied many organizations from both the public and private sectors in their data sharing projects, and for about 10 years now. Next slide, please. And thank you. And in more practical terms, we offer these organizations an online platform designed to empower them to share their data either internally or externally, and make this data easy to find, visualize, and reuse. Next slide, please. So as just mentioned, we are collaborating with various major players in the energy sector, including players you might know, such as Enedis, Engie, Schneider Electric, and Elia, or Elia in Belgium. And 2021 has actually seen a very promising momentum for the acceleration of open data in the sector, which I believe the presumed open principle promoted by Energy Systems Catapult and Ofgem is clearly a demonstration of. Next slide, please. So within this first half of the year, we've seen the development of interesting projects across Europe. So EDF Group has therefore launched their own open data portal in January this year. And they have been followed by Sorégie, a DSO in Western France, and Elia Group, Elia being one of Europe's top 5 transmission system operators. So from these initiatives and other ones, obviously, there are a few interesting points worth highlighting. Next slide, please. So first, these organizations from the energy sector were already making files available for download from their own institutional websites, and some other data sets were being exchanged on under one-on-one partnership agreements. And as more data are being produced with finer granularities, as well as data are being consumed by more stakeholders, these organizations' challenge was to actually industrialize the process and to distribute data in a more harmonized and modern fashion. In the end, to make data easier to find and also to encourage reuse, as previously discussed. Secondly, there's also the willingness to address the needs of a broad community of stakeholders. So obviously market players, but not only. And such data are, for instance, key for local governments for efficient policy making, and especially to help them shape their energy and mobility plans. And in fact, we observe the same requests for access to data from local governments across Europe. And last week, I was, for instance, hearing an organization from the sector that it is estimated that half of the municipalities in France don't know their territory's energy consumption data. So there is still room for more access to energy data, quite obviously. And this is also raising the point that addressing a larger range of stakeholders also means making data more immediately comprehensible with clear metadata, visualizations, and data services on top of releasing raw data. So these are just 2 challenges that were, I believe, common to various players in the energy sector. And next slide, please. I'd like just to close my my presentation by talking about 2 points, 2 other general points. So first, opening data is not only about opening access data to more stakeholders, it's also about making data more easily available to every stakeholders. And this is including internal stakeholders, as I believe Michel has previously mentioned it. And this is in fact directly contributing to the development of a data culture within organizations, which is creating virtual circles. And also another point I wanted to highlight, based on our experience, we have observed very diverse approaches from energy players across Europe. And I believe that's showing that opening up data is has actually the potential to unleash a variety of benefits. So just to mention 2 examples very quickly, Energias de Portugal, a Portuguese multinational utility, and they are actually the 4th largest wind energy producer in the world. They have opened up their data portal in 2018, I think. And in fact, their approach is very clear. Every new data that they are publishing on their data portal is accompanied by a challenge that is based on an issue that is faced by their business units. So just to give you an example, recently they wanted to work on minimizing the carbon footprint of their existing power generation assets. Sorry. And they have called data scientists from outside the organization to submit an algorithm to predict slag formation based on 3 years of historical data they've provided them with on 2 boilers in operation. So this is very use case oriented, and it's aimed at facilitating the creation of new and better knowledge and also accelerating research on new energies production, as well as minimizing the impact of fossil-based energy production. Interestingly, also, through this open data initiative, they want to attract new talents and show that EDP is open for collaboration, especially to address the challenges that have been mentioned previously. And another player, Enedis. So Enedis is France, the French largest distribution system operator, and they have a slightly different approach. They have launched their open data portal in 2015, and ever since they have worked on creating data services that are in adequation with their user profiles to make sure their data are accessible to all types of stakeholders. And for instance, they have developed data services for local authorities to easily generate an energy summary report using the data that are available from their open data portal. So it's really great to see UK Power Networks being part of this momentum with other European leaders, with this very clear willingness to engage all possible stakeholders in helping them to find the best approach to this open data project implementation. Thank you for letting me say a few words about our experience. And Merlin, I will let you take over from there.
Fanny, thank you very much, and thank you for giving us an insight into just how big an issue and how much is going on across the across Europe, which is certainly news to me. Okay, we're going to now have a quick video which is talking a little bit more about this idea of an open data portal. So we're testing the technology here. So Hannah, cue video.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Flack and I work in the Information and Data Solutions team for UK Power Networks, working with data and providing analysis for both internal and external users. I've been in the company for nearly 20 years and data is seen as more powerful than ever, so my role has become increasingly more focused and interesting. Being involved in this open data project is really exciting for me, as I know it will deliver real value to our customers and stakeholders. This platform is being developed in order to facilitate access to our referential and dynamic data, with the tools to create visualizations and dashboards to show and share analysis. By introducing you to our portal early, we hope to work with you and provide the data you need to see or want to consume. Please be aware though that this is very much in the early stages of development, and currently we are only using a sample of test data. This demonstration will highlight the key features available and how we can customize the portal to enhance the user experience and bring insight from the raw data. There is an optional registration form to gain even more functionality and engagement, and you'll see as we go along. The homepage highlights key information using KPI cards and can be used to search for specific data using keywords. Or we can easily navigate to a dashboard or another data service that you need, such as the DG mapping tool, DFES data, or the G81 website. We can display interactive visuals where you can click for more information and drill down into the data set behind it. Here you can also find information about our datasets, plus the latest news from UK Power Networks, currently showing our Twitter feed, but we could also provide insights into our open energy data activities. The main menu at the top will take you directly to where you want to go within the portal. The Data tab takes you to our data catalogue, where we hope to provide many meaningful data sets which can be explored using keywords and filters here for data discovery on the left. Each catalogue card shows more detail about the dataset, including the description and license information. And there's also a popularity score based on the number of calls and downloads. Once on the dataset, you can see the volume of records in the top left corner. And on the Information tab, you'll find the data schema where you can determine what the fields are, the descriptions, technical identifiers if you're using API or widgets, and the data type. Registered users can also subscribe to the dataset to receive key messages and updates. Within each dataset, there can be multiple tabs which show different ways in which to view and analyse the data. This can vary according to the data types available in the dataset. The table view shows the raw data, which can be easily sorted or filtered on the identified facets on the left. This extract, or the whole dataset, can then be downloaded using the Export tab into familiar formats including CSV, JSON or Excel. And to allow interoperability, there's also the ability to create an API call. At a dataset level, the portal allows you to filter and sort accordingly and then provides the query and data to be consumed. We believe one of the main requirements of our data will be to understand what assets we have, where they are, and the load and capacity of that equipment. The best way to present this data is using a geospatial visualization. Let's see our sample data of grid and primary substations. By clicking on this custom tab, we can find the equipment we're interested in. And from here, we can drill in by clicking on the icon and see more detail, such as the time-based series maximum demand forecast against the capacity. All this data is within our catalogue and can be explored further or downloaded for additional desktop analysis. Back to the main menu. Let's look at the map. Users will be able to enjoy the freedom of creating their own maps by layering data both from within the UK Power Network's data catalogue and also from the Opendatasoft data network. As an example, to show the number of low carbon technologies connected by primary substation, we simply pick the relevant dataset. We have the ability to filter on specific facets that we're interested in. For example, let's select our EPN-DNO. Here you can easily see the number of low carbon technologies that we've got connected to our network. Let's add another dataset. Again, we can filter on the area to reduce the number of records returned. And now we can see the layers of our low carbon technologies against the local authority boundaries. We can see more detail by zooming in or searching for a specific location and clicking on the substation that you're interested in to get the detail. This map can be configured and for registered users, named and saved for use at a later date, and even shared as a widget or a direct link. Similarly, under the heading chart, users can easily create their own graphs for analysis too. Here's a quick example. Let's select the dataset of interest, HV cables, choose how you want to display the data, change the colour. We can add another dataset or configure further to add greater depth. Registered users can also name the graph and save for use another time or share using the hyperlink provided. Within the API section, we can access the ODS Swagger console. This has been built to help developers create and test the dataset queries to help speed up your analysis regime. This bit's quite technical, but within the How-To button, we're taken to the ODS library, which shows tutorials and videos to help any new users navigate around and get the most out of the portal features. This is an exciting opportunity as we have the ability to present data in so many different ways and make it easily available for you to consume too. We'd really appreciate any assistance in developing or testing our portal, so please get in touch if this is something that you'd be interested in. Thank you for watching. We look forward to collaborating with you to ensure this portal provides the data and information required and put UK Power Networks at the centre of the open energy data community.
Excellent, and thank you. Seamless triggering of a video as well for probably the first time I've ever seen a webinar, actually. So congratulations to the team. Clearly, the commentary alongside that, people are really excited about that kind of functionality, etc. So that's really good to hear. Okay. We've now hit 11:30, and as a good chair, I'd like to try and finish on time. I know you're all busy people, lots to do. We're going to do a follow-up email with links to things. Matt has been doing a great job answering the questions in the Q&A session, but I think we will commit, UKPM will commit to taking that offline, making sure they've responded to everything, and we'll supply that back to all delegates, and in the cover email we'll make sure we include a link to the portal, etc. as well. So that'll be what you see next, and now we've had all this information and guidance to help develop the kind of the thinking around open data and how UK Power Networks can engage with you all. Then you will be seeing the fruits of that in further engagement opportunities to involve yourself. So I think on that note, it probably only remains for me to thank everyone, to thank UK Power Networks for sort of making all this happen, to thank all the presenters for their time and effort today. Probably most of all, though, to thank all of you. We had up to 200 of you at the beginning talking about, engaging to talk about open energy data. So that's fantastic, and you've been great in terms of sharing your insights through the chat, through the Q&A, through Menti. So loads of great information back. So many thanks to all of you for engaging. We hope to see you again shortly, and only really remains for me to, once upon a time, I would wish our delegates at events a safe journey home, but I will wish you all a safe journey to your kitchen to enjoy a good, well-earned cup of tea or coffee. Thank you very much, and see you soon.